What if the bomb that shook Iran's nuclear program was never the final weapon in the story? What if it was only the first move in a race that had already begun underground? Because somewhere inside the mountains of central Iran, a new problem may be taking shape. A facility buried deeper, a target designed after the last strike, and a question that military planners may eventually have to answer. What happens when the weapon that defeated one mountain meets a mountain built specifically to survive it? That is the mystery surrounding what researchers have come to call Pickaxe Mountain. And the first thing you need to understand is this: the mountain may be more important than the bomb. The United States carried out one of the most complex long-range strike operations of the modern era. B-2 Spirit stealth bombers crossed thousands of miles. They were supported by tankers and other aircraft. And GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrators were used against deeply buried Iranian nuclear facilities, including Fordow. The operation demonstrated something the world had spent years debating. Deep underground does not automatically mean unreachable. But here's the problem. The moment that capability was demonstrated, the strategic equation changed. Because the defender gets to study the attack too, Iran could watch where the weapons struck. It could examine what survived. And somewhere beneath the mountains, engineers could begin asking a very different question. Not how do we protect the old facility? How do we build the next one? That is where Pickaxe Mountain enters the story. Satellite imagery has drawn attention to a major underground construction project near Natanz, in Iran's Isfahan province. The location matters, because this is not an isolated mountain in an empty landscape. It's close to one of Iran's most important nuclear sites. And that proximity creates an immediate strategic contradiction. If the original facility was already a target, why build another major underground complex nearby? The answer may be simple. Or it may be something much more complicated. Because underground construction is not just construction. It is strategy carved into rock. Every tunnel represents a decision. Every entrance reveals a compromise. Every ventilation shaft creates a dependency. Every truck carrying material toward a mountain leaves a trace. The deeper the facility goes, the harder it may be to destroy. But the more complex the system becomes, and complexity creates its own vulnerabilities. Look at the mountain from above. The first thing a satellite sees is not a nuclear facility. It sees roads, vehicles, excavation zones, tunnel entrances, freshly disturbed earth, patterns, and those patterns tell a story. Analysts have used commercial satellite imagery to monitor activity around the site. Construction appears to have continued over an extended period. Vehicles have moved through the area. Tunnel portals have remained visible. And the mountain itself has gradually become something more than geography. It has become a potential strategic sanctuary. But here's the first major contradiction. The less useful its secrecy becomes. And Pickaxe Mountain may already be facing that problem. Because once the world knows where you are building, the question changes. It is no longer, can we find it? Can we reach it? That distinction is everything. A hidden facility forces an attacker to search. A known facility forces an attacker to solve. And the United States has spent decades developing weapons designed to solve exactly this kind of problem. The most famous is the GBU-57, a massive precision, guided penetrator designed to attack hardened and deeply buried targets. And only the B-2 Spirit is operationally capable of carrying it. That combination is what makes the system so unusual. The B-2 is not simply another bomber. Its entire design is built around penetrating defended airspace. Its stealth characteristics reduce the ability of radar networks to detect and track it. The GBU-57 then provides the destructive mechanism for attacking what lies beneath the surface. Weapon below, mountain in between. That is the architecture of the problem. But this is where the story becomes much more complicated. Because a weapon designed to penetrate one bunker does not automatically guarantee access to the next. The depth of Pickaxe Mountain has been the subject of intense speculation and analysis. Some assessments have suggested that the facility could be buried dramatically deeper than Fordow. That would create a fundamentally different engineering challenge. The problem would no longer be simply delivering a bomb. It would be delivering enough energy through enough rock to reach something important. And that is a much harder problem. Because underground warfare is a battle of physics. Rock absorbs energy. Structures distribute pressure. Depth produces the effect of surface explosions. And every additional layer of earth changes the calculation. But here's the part most people miss. The mountain itself may not be the only thing planners are studying. Power, access, communication. That means the mountain is not a sealed world. It is a connected world. And every connection creates a potential point of pressure. This is why bunker warfare is rarely as simple as destroy the bunker. The real objective is to make the facility unable to function. And that may not require turning an entire mountain into rubble. It may require disrupting the systems that allow the underground complex to operate. Which brings us back to the lessons of Fordow. The previous strike demonstrated that deep burial could be challenged. But it also demonstrated something else. The defender now knows what the attacker can do. That means the next facility can be designed differently, deeper, more redundant, perhaps with multiple access points. Perhaps with systems separated across different locations. And this creates the central race. The other side changes the target. Every time the target changes, the weapon must evolve. That is how the arms race moves underground. But there is another question hanging over the entire story. What exactly is being protected? Because the physical mountain is only one piece of the strategic puzzle. Iran's nuclear infrastructure includes facilities, equipment, scientific expertise, supply chains, and nuclear material. Even if one underground complex were damaged, the broader capability would not necessarily disappear. And that means the real question is not whether Pickaxe Mountain can survive a strike. It is whether destroying it would actually solve the strategic problem. That distinction matters. A military strike and damage infrastructure. It can raise costs. It can change calculations. But it cannot erase technical knowledge. It cannot make scientists forget what they know. And it cannot automatically resolve the political conflict that created the nuclear crisis in the first place. So the mountain represents something larger. It represents the next phase of the competition. Iran appears to be adapting to the reality of precision strike warfare. The United States and its allies are adapting to that adaptation. And somewhere between those two movements lies the future of the conflict. Now at another layer. Reports have raised questions about uranium, enriched to high levels, that remained unaccounted for after the strikes. If material was moved before facilities were attacked, then the military problem becomes much more complicated. Destroying a building is one challenge. Knowing where the strategic material has gone is another. And this is where the story begins to move away from the mountain. Because the real battlefield may not be underground at all. It may be the information surrounding what is underground. Satellite imagery, intelligence assessments, inspector access, military planning, public statements. Each side is trying to understand what the other side knows, and what the other side does not know. That creates a dangerous game. Because uncertainty can protect a facility, but uncertainty can also provoke an attack. If an adversary believes something important may be hidden underground, it may act before it knows exactly what is there. And that is the first major strategic shift. Everyone is watching the mountain. But the real contest may be over what everyone believes the mountain contains. That is where this story is heading. Because if Pickaxe Mountain is the next generation of Iran's underground strategy. Then the United States faces a problem that cannot be solved by simply dropping the same bomb again. The weapon may be known. The mountain may be known. But the consequences are not. And when a weapon designed to defeat the last fortress meets a fortress designed after the last weapon was used, the battlefield changes completely. The question is no longer whether the United States can strike deep. The question is whether striking deep can still achieve the political objective. And that is where the real war begins. Everyone thinks this battle is about a bomb trying to reach a mountain. But the real battle is about something much larger. Can military power stop a nuclear program that keeps adapting faster than the weapons designed to destroy it? That is the transformation at the center of Pickaxe Mountain. The surface war is visible. Satellite images, cratered entrances. But underneath that surface is a different war. A war over time. A war over information. A war over industrial capacity. And ultimately, a war over decisions. Because Iran does not need to make one mountain invulnerable. It only needs to make the problem expensive enough, uncertain enough, and politically dangerous enough that attacking it becomes harder than tolerating it. That is the strategic logic of deep burial, and it explains why Pickaxe Mountain matters. The mountain may not be a fortress designed to survive forever. It may be a fortress designed to buy time. Time to move material. Time to relocate equipment. Time to disperse capabilities. Time to create uncertainty. And in a nuclear crisis, time can be more valuable than concrete. Because if the United States strikes Pickaxe Mountain, the question becomes, if the facility is damaged, but not eliminated, Iran can adapt again. If the facility is destroyed, if nuclear material has already been moved, the physical strike may solve only part of the problem. And if the strike causes a wider regional war, the consequences may extend far beyond the original target. That is why the mountain is not the entire battlefield. It is one node in a much larger system. Look at the map. Iran sits at the center of a region connecting the Middle East, Central Asia, and the world's most important energy corridors. The Persian Gulf lies nearby. The Strait of Hormuz sits at the center of global energy security. A major escalation around Iran could affect oil markets, shipping insurance, tanker traffic, and the economies of countries thousands of miles away. A bomb falling on a mountain can therefore become an economic event. A missile launched from Iran can become an energy event. An anchor attack can become a political event. And a political crisis can become a military event. Everything is connected. This is the invisible battlefield. The missile is not always the weapon. Sometimes the uncertainty it creates is the weapon. It must decide whether to move assets. It must decide whether to act. If Israel believes the threat is growing, it must decide whether to wait. If neighboring states fear escalation, they must decide how closely to cooperate. Every decision creates another decision, and the longer the cycle continues, the harder it becomes to control. This is why the military balance cannot be measured only by the number of bombs available. It must also be measured by industrial capacity. Can Iran replace missiles? Can it rebuild drones? Can it restore damaged infrastructure? Can it move sensitive equipment? Can the United States maintain the aircraft, tankers, and munitions required for sustained operations? Because modern war is not one strike. It is a contest between systems. And systems fight over endurance. That is why Iran's missile and drone stockpiles matter. Even if its nuclear infrastructure is under pressure, its ability to retaliate remains part of the strategic equation. A military planner considering a strike against Pickaxe Mountain cannot think only about what happens to the mountain. The planner must also think about what happens afterward. Missiles could be launched. Drones could attack bases. Shipping could be threatened. Regional allies could become targets. Energy infrastructure could be disrupted. And suddenly, a single underground facility becomes connected to the security of an entire region. That is the strategic dilemma. Destroying the target may be possible. Controlling the consequences may not be. And this is why public statements matter. They are not simply sharing information. They are applying pressure. A public warning can force an adversary to move. But moving can reveal information. Waiting can look like weakness. Silence can create uncertainty. The words themselves become part of the battlefield. That is why the most important weapons in this conflict are sometimes invisible. A satellite image, a leaked intelligence assessment, a presidential statement, a anchor repositioning, a diplomatic warning. Each one changes the opponent's calculation. And the more both sides understand this, the more the conflict becomes a game of signaling. Which brings us back to the central question. Can Pickaxe Mountain survive? Perhaps. But survival itself may not be enough. The mountain could remain physically intact while its strategic purpose collapses. If Iran has to move its operations elsewhere, the mountain has failed as a sanctuary. If inspectors cannot access it, the mountain becomes a political problem. If attacking it becomes politically acceptable, its deterrent value changes. That is the deeper meaning of the mountain. A fortress does not have to be destroyed to lose its strategic value. Sometimes it only has to stop creating confidence. And that is where the future becomes uncertain. Iran may respond by building deeper, or smaller, or more dispersed. The United States may respond by developing more capable penetrators, more advanced intelligence, more autonomous systems, more persistent surveillance. The next generation of this competition may not even look like the last one. It may involve facilities too small to identify from space, mobile enrichment equipment, distributed supply chains, multiple underground sites, decentralized command structures. The harder the target becomes to destroy, the more the attacker may focus on preventing it from functioning. And that means the future battlefield may move away from destruction, toward disruption, toward denial. This is the most important lesson. The United States does not necessarily need to destroy every facility if it can prevent the system from operating. Iran does not necessarily need to protect every facility if it can preserve enough of the system to rebuild. Both sides are therefore fighting a different kind of war. One side is trying to impose delay. The other is trying to preserve continuity. And the outcome may depend on which side can adapt faster. That is why Pickaxe Mountain matters beyond Iran. Other countries are watching. States with strategic programs are watching. Military engineers are watching. Every government that relies on hardened underground infrastructure is studying what happened at Fordow. And every government considering precision strike capabilities is studying the same thing. The lesson is uncomfortable. The age of the perfect fortress may be ending. But the age of the invisible target may be beginning. If fixed underground facilities become vulnerable, states may move toward mobility. They may move toward deception. If deception becomes vulnerable, they may move toward dispersion. And if dispersion becomes impossible to control, the political pressure for diplomacy may increase, or the opposite may happen. States may decide that only stronger deterrence can protect them. That is where the danger lies. Military technology can change the physical battlefield. But it can also change what governments believe they need to survive. A successful bunker-busting strike might convince one country that its adversary is vulnerable. It might convince another that it must build something even harder to destroy. And that is how tactical victories can produce strategic instability. The question is no longer whether the United States has a bomb powerful enough to reach a mountain. The real question is whether any military strike can permanently solve a problem that exists as a network of people, knowledge, and political will. Because you can destroy concrete. You can collapse tunnels. You can crater roads. But knowledge survives. Systems adapt. And strategic competition rarely ends where the first bomb lands. Pickaxe Mountain may eventually become a target. It may become a bargaining chip. It may become irrelevant. Or it may become the symbol of a new era in underground warfare. The world is already learning from it. The next fortress will be designed differently. The next weapon will be different. And the next intelligence operation will begin earlier. That is the cycle. Defense creates offense. Offense creates adaptation. Adaptation creates a new defense. And the cycle accelerates. The question is no longer whether the bomb can destroy the mountain. The real question is whether the mountain can force the attacker to spend more time, more money, and more political capital than the target is worth. Because that is how modern fortresses actually survive. Not by becoming invincible, by becoming too costly to defeat. So now the strategic debate moves beyond Pickaxe Mountain. If future wars are fought against targets that can hide underground, move between facilities, disperse across networks, and rebuild faster than they can be destroyed, then the old definition of military victory begins to disappear. And that leaves us with one final question. Do you believe the next generation of wars will be won by the side with the most powerful weapons, or by the side that can adapt faster than its enemy can find the next target?